welcome to the Salford Film Production Podcast. Today we are going to be chatting about the new MA programme, which we have starting here at Salford in September. I'm Tom Kirby. I am the programme leader for the MA, and joining me on the podcast today are three of the other core members of the team. And today we're going to spend a little bit of time chatting about the MA, what it is, why we think it's something good to do as a filmmaker. And to join me in this conversation, we've got John, we've got Beth, and we've got Pavel. So we'll just go around everyone just getting to say hi. So Beth, do you want to kind of just introduce yourself, those who might not know you?
Hello, I'm Beth McCann. You'll see me over the two modules, maybe three. I specialise in screenwriting and storytelling, so that'll be the area where I'll be mostly kind of inputting and sharing ideas and your ideas and working with you on those areas.
Thank you very much, Beth.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Zybel. I primarily teach directing on the BA, and I'll be teaching the devising, what we're calling the devising module in Trimester 2 on the MA. And one of my focuses, other than being a practitioner of filmmaking and performance and other kinds of media work, I'm also a practice as research scholar. I write on practice as research in cinema.
Thank you very much, John. And also, lastly joining us, we've got Pavel. So Pavel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks a lot, Tom. So, hi, everybody. My name is Pavel. I will be teaching on the Established and Innovative Practices, which is the first core module on the MA. And that really links well to my expertise and my experience, which is in experimental cinema, experimental filmmaking, and general sort of broad approach to cinematography, to directing film. And so this is definitely something we will be able to explore through the module in terms of solidifying your existing skills, but also to develop these skills and broaden your horizons in terms of the future filmmaking practices.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Pavel. And also, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Tom. My background is in documentary filmmaking, but it's also in the kind of that model of practice as research. So through my work, I always want to be integrating research that I'm doing into my filmmaking and my filmmaking into my research. So I really see it as a two-way dialogue happening between those disciplines. So thank you to all of you that have sent questions in. We've got a nice list to crack on through today. And to start off, we've kind of had a little bit of an introduction to who we are and what skills we're bringing. But one question we've got asked is, if you were a film student, why about this MA would you want to come and do the course? So Beth, do you want to kind of kick us off with that? Of if you were looking to an MA, why would this course excite you?
Thinking about it from a screenwriting point of view, and in terms of exploring kind of the different disciplines and being able to see it from different angles, I think is something that would be really, if I was a student, what I'd be really interested in. So not only would I be thinking about the storytelling, the craft of that, the choices of what I'm kind of making in terms of the stories that I'm telling, the characters that I'm using, but I'm also thinking about it in terms of how I'd be working with other disciplines and how that would challenge the way that I would approach my storytelling. So it would give me that whole kind of range of areas to be considering, but ultimately to challenge me, to really challenge what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and have the opportunity in the space to do that.
Brilliant. I think that idea of kind of really challenging yourself and pushing yourself and having the MA as a space to do that is something I find really exciting. John, do you want to kind of pick up on that? Are those ideas riffing on what you would do, or are there different angles you'd be bringing in?
Absolutely. My first thought when you asked the question was that it's a transdisciplinary degree, and if you're focused on one role, that's fantastic. You could come in and work on that role. One way that I've always worked as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, is to reach outside the role I'm in and to learn something about what's going on elsewhere. If you're a director and you're working in the edit, both those practices start to talk to each other. I think editors are writers in some sort of form. They're writing on the other end with timing, and let's cut off 2 frames there to make this thing work, right? They're rewriting story in a way, and sometimes absolutely creating something that wasn't even conceived in the original bit. So the idea of working sort of transdisciplinarily, is that a word? Working in a transdisciplinary way across all of the practices of filmmaking while being able to focus on one area, that's really exciting to me. That's what I would be taking advantage of. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Pavel, as you mentioned in your introduction, you kind of lead the first core module. What is it about that first core module that's really exciting you about if you were a student applying to do this MA?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as much as the first module as the MA on the whole, I really think that what this really comes down to is that our kind of a key ambition or key proposition that we are thinking about the industry of tomorrow and the future industry. And so where this MA will really help people to adapt for the jobs of the future is precisely that they will be able to expand their minds and become more flexible in their skills and in their understanding of the way they make films. And here the first module will set a really good ground for that. And so that the way this will prepare you for the future is that rather than sort of specializing for one job and then possibly waiting in that job for it to become obsolete, you become, and very similarly to what John has just said about this kind of a transdisciplinary approach, you will have enough transferable skills and enough widely applicable expertise that you could not only tap into various roles and to adapt to the newly emerging roles in the future, but you will also almost be more likely to be positioned in a way as to define the kind of the ground rules of how you work rather than just being passively adopting them. So I think this is what really the MA can uniquely achieve, especially sort of as a sort of a significant build up on top up on the BA.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pavel. I think for me, what I would be really excited about in the MA is firstly the kind of this culture of collaboration that the MA is going to be working in, that it's going to be a smaller course. We're aiming for about kind of 30 students to be coming and joining us in September. And within that cohort, we're really wanting to kind of be fostering support for one another as filmmakers in the practical sense of working on other projects and kind of helping out. So if you're cinematography, you might be working with different directors working with different editors, but also in that kind of soft support as well of actually having a community of filmmakers spending a year together, working together, supporting each other, learning and growing as filmmakers. So actually through the course, you're building kind of your skill set as a thinker and as a filmmaker. That's not just the kind of the hard skills of to direct, you do this, to operate the camera, you do that, but actually in that way of how can I collaborate and work within the ever-changing environment. As Pavel said, the film industry is changing. The COVID crisis has caused radical changes in the film industry and how it's approaching it. Those in the industry are looking at the kind of the next generation of filmmakers coming out of film schools and film courses, thinking what skills, what new ways of approaching these problems, which we've been staring at with our kind of fixed mind, are you able to bring in? And I think in the MA, we really want to be kind of having that as kind of a course, that nature of collaboration. But also in that collaboration, the other key thing that really excites me is the team that I'm kind of fortunate enough to kind of be program leading here on the MA, that the rest of the people you see here on the podcast are all brilliant filmmakers and practitioners and researchers that have all got such different skill sets and ideas, and the other staff that will be coming in also, they're all kind of coming from very different walks of life, and they'll be feeding into the MA. So it becomes this big melting pot. So it's not just looking at us for the answers, but actually we're having those discussions with you, to help kind of work out and troubleshoot it as filmmakers kind of alongside you. So I think that idea of a more mentorship almost is something that's really exciting me about the MA. So our next question is, so we've talked a little bit about how we're all excited about the MA, but what is it that this Salford MA does that other MAs at other institutions does? Kind of what is it that we're doing that is different? So John, do you want to kind of kick us off on this, on how you see this MA as something different?
I mean, I think that my answer to this question is, it's similar to my answer to a lot of the questions that we've been hearing, is the practice as research element. And this does not mean that we're taking an academic approach. It means that we're thinking in a way that embeds self-reflection right into the process. Quite often, analysis and the kinds of work that gets done by say, a film studies person who is not a practitioner, for example, they reflect on work that they haven't done. But people who are reflecting on their own practices are using reflection as a practice as they go. And that, I think this is an idea that's used in practice as research scenarios in many disciplines. I've recently done some research on practice as research in cinema, and there isn't a lot of work out there being done. We're really at the beginning of that kind of exploration that's happening. Cinema is a really young art form, right? It's 100 and some odd years old. Practice as research in theater, right? You could argue it's been going back for 2,000 years in the West. So anyway, this thing of adding self-reflection into the process, I think that's something that's really unique to us. The ramifications of doing that are huge. We could talk for hours about what that means, but I wanted to lay that in as something that to me is really crucial in answering this question. I would say it also relates to ideas of play, right? That filmmaking is often seen, right, because we think about industry, and there are industrial practices and industrial kinds of workflows that are, I mean, sometimes absolutely necessary. You need to get it done as quickly as you can. Time is money. All of these things that you don't get this sense of play that might be necessary to make a really interesting film. And it's really hard. It's really difficult. Having a year to be able to play, and it's very serious play. This is not messing around play. This is very specific, articulated play from people who have been playing for, in my case, 30 years. My work is around play. I think that might be all I have to say about that bit.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. And Beth, do you want to kind of add in some thoughts of kind of how you see kind of the MA, kind of particularly to say from like a screenwriting perspective, how does this kind of do something different that other courses aren't doing?
I think what it kind of, if we think about it from a screen, keep bringing it back to screenwriting, you know, this isn't a screenwriting MA, right? This is a film production MA with aspects where you can take and challenge your screenwriting within it, because we're storytellers, and that's kind of one of the roles that you might be looking at, or one of the many roles. I think, you know, I will keep kind of reiterating that it's not just, you know, John used the word play. And so even in terms of storytelling, this is an opportunity to play. And through that act of playing, there is an act of discovery. And so rather than kind of coming with ideas and saying, I'm going to write this and it's going to be this long and I'm going to create this, this is actually about kind of starting with ideas and seeing through the act of play, or the act of challenging, or the act of kind of research, or kind of how we play with that, what we discover. So I think that for me, you know, it's that kind of flexibility and learning from that flexibility, playing with flexibility and seeing where that takes us and having the freedom to be able to do that. I think that that's a really key thing. You know, I'm very much interested in the process of screening and the journey that writers go on, and through my research, that's, you know, the area that I'm in particularly kind of study. But, you know, being able to go on that journey during the MA is something that we're going to really support writers and creatives filmmakers to do.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I think, yeah, that idea of it's filmmakers and storytelling and kind of how that kind of can work together and kind of the different roles so we can all play into that. I think it's something really that we want to kind of integrate into the MA. It's not just kind of you have your editors sat in one corner and your sound recorders in another. We really want that kind of playing together. Before. Pavel, do you want to kind of wrap us up on these thoughts of what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just really building on everything that has been said, just maybe just really rephrasing it in my own words. But I would say that really what I think it expresses that kind of clearly that unique aspect of the MA, and that idea of play is that really what we also want to do. We want to create a unique kind of a combination, amalgamation of creativity and these kind of hard skills, right? These kind of the craft and your ability. So we really strive to make that a one thing and not a separate thing. And another thing that again I believe we are trying to sort of make one thing is that kind of overcoming the distinction between practice and theory. And that, by the way, is also what really is at stake for me in practice as research. That idea that really it's not about some kind of a conceptual theory that stands apart from your filmmaking practice, but rather it's a theory that's directly embedded in the practice to an extent that if it wasn't for the important reflective element that John mentioned, you might not be even aware of absorbing and actually learning the theory. So it's about overcoming the distinction between practice and theory, and so that you will advance your critical abilities, but you will advance them fundamentally through doing practice and through being a better practitioner. And a final point I want to make, just again thinking about the kind of the unique selling points that we can offer, is also that really we are building on a very large and successful film production department, and it would be a mistake to see these things as fundamentally separate. In fact, we will definitely strive to make as much use of the BA as possible, both in terms of the wonderful pool of diverse staff that we have in the department, but also this extremely productive and diverse pool of students that study on the BA, and so there will ultimately be the opportunity to use these students as crew members and to enter into collaboration with them. So again, I think this is something that not many other departments could offer, which is this sort of a dynamic, large and successful film production department that we are building on and we are building in context of.
Brilliant. Thanks. I think that is a really good thought to kind of wrap up that element of the thinking. So if I'm kind of a student thinking about kind of applying to the MA, am I right in seeing it as just like a top up to the fourth year to the BA, or is it something different? Kind of how does kind of the MA transfer something kind of different from the BA? Does someone kind of kick us off with your thoughts on how is the kind of the MA a kind of a step up from the BA?
I feel like I have 2 hours worth of material on this that I could just talk for, honestly, but I obviously won't. Okay, when we got together and started putting the foundational stones in of this edifice. That's a terrible metaphor because stones are too rigid. We need flexible foundations. But so here's where I come from. When I'm thinking about the BA and reflecting on all the conversations we've had about the BA and what the master's is going to do, I think about a lot of conversations we had around skill building and foundational work that gets done in the BA. And a phrase that kept coming up is the right tool for the job. When we talk about kit, there's the right tool for the job. And so we're thinking a lot about the how of filmmaking here for our BA students. And they're dealing with they're covering tons of material in 3 years. And to some extent, a lot of the work that I do with my BA students involves emulation, where they're emulating their their favorite filmmakers. They're emulating filmmakers they may not vibe with to see if they could expand their work. And this is a really strong approach to any kind of basic craft, right? And I would say that the tools that you're dealing with are mainly technical tools, right? Cameras, lenses, workflows, software, techniques to some extent come in. And when they move to the MA, the tools all those tools are absolutely part of the practice. Absolutely part of it. There's no way to separate them out. However, there's another set of tools that come in, and these are, I think, they're critical tools. They're thinking tools. They're tools that an artist or a craftsperson embodies, and you only embody them through practice. If you're a woodworker, you work with your measuring gauge and your marking and your saws and your chisels. But every piece of wood that you deal with is going to be completely different. And if you're going to come to a piece of wood in the future that throws you into a different relationship to your craft, if you have craft and if you have a way of thinking about it, you will know how to deal with this piece of wood that you've never dealt with before. So our material is not wood. Our material is the world around us, right? So the tools for the master's degree, I think, start to become the ways that we look at the world, the ways that we think, the assumptions that we have. And we go, oh my God, this is how I always work. Why? Why do I continually work this way? And in the second module, that's where we'll really unsettle that stuff, so that when they come back to those practices, they now understand when those practices that they're engaged in are useful and when they need to be changed, when they need, and the idea is that because they're craftspeople, they now know how to train themselves to deal with the material that they couldn't have anticipated, that turns up down the road, right? So we move from sort of emulation to mastery. And I don't like that term, so I just say craft, from emulation towards craft.
Does kind of anyone else want to kind of jump on the back of what John said there and kind of build on that as some thoughts of how you see the difference perhaps between like the MA and the BA is?
Well, just really to add, or again, maybe just sort of slightly sort of push it further and rephrase. I think it's almost like shifting gears. I think it is definitely something. I would say that it's an acceleration. It is precisely where you pick up all the essential skills and you develop yourself as a practitioner on the BA, and then obviously if you were to enter the industry, you enter at a certain level, and the industry would shape your abilities and knowledge in a specific direction. Whereas an MA, or especially this MA, is a really opportunity to kind of to shift into a different register and to accelerate your growth, so that you can accelerate your kind of inner development and become sort of become oriented toward the industry at a high level. So I would definitely say that doing the MA would help you possibly to enter the industry with a much more sophisticated outlook on what you can achieve and what you can get out of any specific professional situation. So again, just to repeat, I think it is definitely a way to sort of to accelerate, to boost your abilities and knowledge, not just a sort of a iteration of what has happened previously.
Brilliant, thanks, Pavel. And I think to me also it's the idea of, and we've spoken about it already a lot in this podcast, this idea of kind of our research and how we're actually really kind of feeding that into it. And within the MA, kind of what you'll be doing as filmmakers and as kind of researchers is be doing that research into what have others done before, why have they done that, and not just kind of in your work go, this filmmaker did this researcher said this, but actually drawing together different ideas and opinions to come up with a new concept, come up with a new idea of innovation. So what you actually start to be doing is it's not just writing a report that says this filmmaker says ... but actually this filmmaker says this other practitioner says this. What happens if I bring these two together and here's something I've made that's actually done that, and in my reflection I've actually kind of thought, okay, how might this work? How might this actually then drive me forward as a filmmaker? So it's that idea of kind of using your research to actually underpin your innovation and be driving it forward. And I think that's kind of the big thing to me. I think it's kind of the shift between the BA and the MA. So we've spoken a lot, kind of broad kind of brushstrokes about the MA kind of as a whole, some of kind of why we might want to do it. But it's probably really good now to actually have a little bit of a chat about the kind of the modules that we've got on the course. We've got the way our course is structured. We have 3 core modules which you do, and they are 60 credits. So you do 1 module in trimester 1, 1 module trimester 2, 1 module trimester 3. And today kind of we thought it was kind of good to kind of chat through each of them, give you a little bit of detail about them, so when you kind of if you wanted to come in September, you can actually kind of know what it might be happening. So to kick us off, our trimester 1 module is called Established and Innovative Practices. So Pavel, kind of what is established and innovative practices, and how is that kind of forming a module that you'll be exploring on the MA?
Thank you, Tom. So really the kind of the established and innovatory, I think, are key to sort of understanding this or framing this. It is definitely a great opportunity to, first of all, and for that reason, it's also a great start to the MA. It's a great opportunity to gauge your own skills, to solidify what you can do and what you know, also to build on this, to top up on any skills, to become proficient or more proficient at a variety of aspects of your practice. And then it's also an opportunity to push this further, to open it up a little bit further, to consider some ways in which the current practices could be innovated, especially in relation to the industry of the future. So we would be considering nascent techniques and nascent approaches, and then also it will be up to you to try to combine a variety of approaches and to discover new ways of doing things for yourselves. The term and the module will be structured by 4 weeks, 3 4-week blocks. The first 4 weeks will focus on storytelling, but again, not only from the perspective of writing, although writing will play a big part in it, but any kind of a understanding of storytelling in film. You will work in small groups for this block. You will agree on a kind of a creative challenge, which will be also a theme for each of these 3 blocks, and then you will work towards developing a specific project. There will be plenty of opportunities for reflection, which as John stated, is very important for the whole MA. At the end of the 4-week block, we will have a joint viewing session. We will be able to reflect on what you've achieved and then see how you can build on that for the upcoming 4-week block, which will be the second block will focus on technical aspects of film. So again, there will be the opportunity to top up on your skills in a variety of fields. You'll be able to mix and match a variety of workshops. There will be plenty of industry speakers coming in as well, focusing both on established practices, but also innovatory, future-oriented practices, expanded cinema, anything sort of technological innovations in film. Again, the 4-week block will be framed with a technical challenge. You will be able to actually work individually on projects here in order to to develop a specific project that can build on what you've done in the previous 4-week block, but also that will allow you to specialize and discover something individually. And finally, the third 4-week block will focus on social cultural challenges. So we will try to explore the ways that you can actually put filmmaking and storytelling in film to service of some kind of a important cause or some kind of an important action in the real world. So whether that be perhaps something sort of to initiate positive social change, or to maybe contribute to a cultural institution. We will also focus a lot on practice as a research in the final block, and again to think about how you can frame filmmaking through practice as a research, and that in turn can help you to use film as a specific tool towards initiating some kind of making a cultural or social impact in the world. And final point to make is that in week 12, at the very end of our module, we will have a little we call it a creative practice as a research symposium, but it's not really as don't be alienated by that term. What we really mean by that is that we want to have a joint exhibition, a sort of a critical reflective session where we could invite guests, we can invite other people, other practitioners as well, the broad kind of a teaching staff from the department. And this will be an opportunity really to not only share your work and critically think about your work, but also to contribute with your ideas and opinions to others' work, and also to consider the exhibition opportunities. Again, thinking about sort of beyond just the one screen cinema presentation. This will be an opportunity to you to consider exhibition, different sort of expanded exhibition modes for your films.
Brilliant, Pavel. There's lots happening in trimester 1 in that module, lots of exciting things. Beth, you were also part of the team that kind of was putting together trimester 1's module. Is there anything you want to add to that? I think Pavel's covered all the bases there.
Yeah, I think Pavel's really covered it. I think, for me, what kind of is exciting about the first module is that you are working in these 4-week blocks, and the 4-week blocks give you an opportunity to kind of test what you know, explore other areas for potential kind of investigation and discovery, and to kind of keep building on that in each 4-week block. And that gives you that chance within those each 4 weeks to test things in a kind of a safe way, where you're able to test something, challenge it, and actually it's not about kind of creating something that is perfect. It's about kind of what you tested, how you tested it, and what you discovered by doing that. And so I think that's kind of, hopefully by the end of the 12 weeks, that's something ultimately that you're able to kind of reflect upon and kind of see within your own work what you've found about yourself and your practice, and then that can take you through to trimester 2.
Brilliant. Lovely segue there into trimester 2, which John, you're leading on. It's got the title of Collaboration and Co-Creation, but already in the podcast you've hinted about this idea of devised cinema. So do you want to kind of talk to us about what this second module is?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hoping to do is during the induction week is to put together, and this all depends, a lot of stuff happens in induction week to get the students here and on the ground and set up and in all the university kinds of systems and whatnot. But one of our hopes is that we'll put together a sort of immersive workshop that's maybe 3 or 4 days that devising will be a big chunk of, so that you'll have a sense right up front what devising practices are and what it means. So that it's kind of in the back of your brain. You could do it, you could forget about it, be in the 3 challenges of the module 1, dedicate yourself to that work. And then when you turn up for module 2, and we come back to devising, maybe you'll understand a little bit more about how it unsettles the practices that Pavel was talking about. You're solidifying and you're strengthening and you're interrogating in trimester 1. Now, that I think, in order to talk about devising, the first thing I have to say is if you've not done it, there is no way I can make you understand it. But I'll tell you what devising is not. It's not improvising from scratch. It's not starting from zero every day. What do we do? Where do we put the camera? What are we shooting? That's not how it works. And I'll give you a really quick idea about how it works. Much of the devising practices that I do in cinema come from a theater company called the Tectonic Theater Company in the United States. And you can go look them up. They're amazing. Moises Kaufman. And they come to me through a guy called Greg Parati, who's a colleague and a friend of mine. And they call it moment work. And the reason they use the word moment is that a moment can be a really tiny little chunk of time. It can be an event. It could be longer. It could be 4 or 5 minutes. It could have a beginning, middle, and end and a narrative. And in a devising practice, even if it were only 1 day long, we would make dozens of moments, and we would repeat those moments over and over again. And here's an example of one. If I handed somebody a shoe and a camera, and I said, you've got 45 seconds to make a story with the shoe and the camera, ready, go. Or you've got 15 minutes to make a 45-second story, go. Now this is a really basic moment that you might make, and you could have a player playing with the shoe. You could have somebody light the shoe in an interesting way and just shoot it for 45 seconds. The possibilities are endless. After we've got hundreds of these, we start seeing themes across them, right? Or maybe let's say dozens if we're just doing our 1 day workshop. We start seeing themes across them, and we could start bringing in our own agendas for the stories. I'm interested in a story about, the sociocultural problems around sweatshops. Great, we could do something with shoes and sweatshops. Let's go. And right, so what happens is, as we start to make moments, they expand, they modify, they take on other characteristics, they bring in stories that are of interest to all of the people involved. Writers are off saying, okay, what could we do to write this out and flesh it out? And from this sort of humble beginning with a camera, a light, and a shoe, we will make a feature film. I realize how terrifying that is for some people. After 2 hours of devising, it becomes really clear, I think, for most people about how that trajectory could flow. If you can't see it already, maybe somebody's done this kind of work and they can see that happening. Again, so inside of this as well, inside of this process is we'll be working in teams again, small teams of 4 or 5. You might go off and make 2 or 3 moments, and we come back and we screen them and we start to work together. And then we may say, all right, the team who did moment 1, pick up a moment from another team, combine them, off you go, come back. As this process continues, you'll see that this structure of self-reflection, of coming back together. What do we have? What is it doing? What kind of future do we imagine for these moments? It really develops a lot of on-the-fly sort of decision-making, so that later in the term, we can start going, okay, let's take these moments and shape them. And now we could bring in, if we want, we could bring in the Arri Alexa and really light the heck out of this scene and make it beautiful and amazing, and have that kind of precise cinematic work that might have been left a little rougher at the beginning of the process.
I was going to jump in, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, John, right? So I'm dead worried about the hierarchical system of filmmaking. Am I going to work in that, John?
Right. I mean, well, so that's one of the things, is that you could, inside of this, let's say one of your team decides, let's say one of the teams decides, we want to do a sitcom. We want to devise a 20-minute sitcom along the lines of, maybe you even have a sitcom you're already interested in. You could build that from scratch and use that kind of hierarchical structure after you start to devise your way into a script. What that winds up doing is opening up the hierarchy, opening up the structures, so that when you're dealing with them, you can push them. Because let's face it, the industry wants to put you in these hierarchical structures. They want you to come in under budget. They want you to work with, you know, a certain level of camera. Netflix has a list of cameras that are acceptable, and they want you to do another diametrically opposed thing to that, and they want you to be innovative too. So you've got to work in these structures and push the structures. And that's what the devising is about. Okay. Good question. Thank you.
A great question, Beth. And yeah, I mean, to me, I'm really excited by this module of how it's going to really kind of grow through those 12 weeks, that it's kind of what we start with and seeing that journey, seeing that process and supporting kind of the students on this journey. So it really makes me excited and intrigued, and it is going to be a challenging module, but just as much as module 1 is and as module 3 is, they're all going to be challenging, but they're all going to be challenging you and pushing you in different directions as filmmakers to be building. So as we talked about earlier, when you leave the MA, you've actually got a really kind of broad and diverse kind of sets of skills or crafts, as John likes to call it, then you can kind of take into the industry, and you can then be kind of presented with problems, and you can actually then be drawing on a whole wealth of experience from the MA, going, hang on a minute, actually what we need to be doing here is this. And it's kind of that idea of kind of taking that moment and kind of going, right, do something with this. Often sometimes be what happens with filmmaking now. There's calls, like funding calls, going, we are happy to fund films that are addressing this topic, that are addressing this idea, and actually then approaching that from a devising position could actually be a really kind of good way to access some of those questions and to access funding that might not be normally traditionally kind of available to us as filmmakers. So I think there's some real kind of interesting scope that this module's having. And obviously kind of we've spoken a little bit about kind of the core of kind of these 2 modules. So how am I actually going to kind of learn and engage with these modules? Is it seminars? Is it workshops? Is it one-to-one tutorials? Since we've just been chatting about yours, John, should we continue about this? Like, how am I as a student, if I was coming in, like, what would I be doing each week on your module?
Right. So, I mean, each week is going to be quite different, right? Because the students will come in with a kind of project already in mind. Now, they're not, of course, tied to that project, but it's just something to intend towards, right? And they'll have a kind of research agenda. They want to think about these things. So depending on how those things all fit together for the companies of students that wind up on the course, will very much shape what it is that we're doing. Really early on, there's going to be just lots of devising work in session, us in a room for hours. I would like to do as much in the first 4 weeks as we can in rooms together. And I think that at some point, students will go out and start devising without me actually being there to facilitate. They'll go off and in teams, go out and shoot on location, and then we'll meet fewer times as times, fewer hours as the weeks progress. When we get to the edit, then it will shift back and we'll be doing more work together because now we're devising an edit together. So it'll start out with about 12 hours a week together, and much of that will be devising. I'm hoping that in the first few weeks, we will be bringing in some advanced camera instruction, because I think that in order to really think through the technologies and how we can use them in unexpected ways, we want to be working at a very high level. And we will have people who are, and we'll have people who aren't, and that'll be fine, because the people who aren't can lean a little bit on the people who are. What else? I think that there will be some writing workshops as well, and we haven't nailed all the details on these, but there will be some writing workshops hopefully that are happening. They're sort of, I would say they're alongside the devising. They're never fully separate, but they aren't strictly done during the hours of the devising workshop. Yeah, and of course every week there will be I mean, at first it'll be every day we will be screening footage, and then after a while it'll be every week we'll be screening for, you know, a certain amount of time.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, John. Pavel, do you want to kind of chat a little bit about like how Module 1 is going to kind of be practically structured in terms of seminars and workshops?
Sure. So in Module 1, there will be weekly sort of 1 day of seminars, 1 day of workshops. We'll try to keep it flexible so that, for example, the seminars can happen on Thursday, workshops on Friday, so that students who might be commuting from afar don't necessarily have to be around the whole week. We will have a online supervision every week, 1 hour, so which could be in a different part of the week, and then obviously rest of the week, ideally, people will be able to work independently or collaborate sort of outside of the formal sessions. So you know, just to reiterate again, there will be a lot of insistence on supervision, so that you get a lot of one-to-one time, whether you're working as a group or individually on projects. So each of the projects you'll be working on will be well supervised on a weekly basis. The seminars will cover a broad range of themes of different variety of skills. For example, in the first 4 weeks, there'll be a lot of focus on script writing, storytelling. We will also, as I said earlier, we'll have a lot of industry speakers as well coming in, or lectures from the department or the wider university to give lectures on or seminars on a variety of subjects. In the workshops will focus on developing your projects every 4th week, meaning sort of at the end of every block of 4 weeks. The workshops will really focus on reflection and discussing, brainstorming on the basis of the outcomes of the project of each 4 weeks. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. So you know, seminars, workshops weekly, a lot of supervision, and we'll try to keep the supervision online to give people flexibility in how they want to timetable their week.
So the course overall is going to be kind of delivered in a blended way, in that some of the sessions will be face-to-face, or the workshops, some of the guest speakers may be in person or online. For example, some of the writers' sessions will specifically be made to be online, so that we get a sense of industry practice of creating a writer's room that replicates kind of the way that people work kind of all around the world. So there is going to be a whole a variety of ways that sessions will be delivered, and that you will get to experience in a range of ways.
And having sessions online has been brilliant in terms of like guest speakers, that have suddenly been kind of able to get in speakers from the States, from in Europe, and they can now just log in to a kind of a call and be joining us and answering questions and having that dialogue, rather than having to think, can I get across to the UK to Salford? So these ideas of these blended elements we will be kind of bringing into our teaching, but we will again be kind of based from Media City, and where all our kind of workshops and kind of practical sessions will be kind of based from, and again kind of tapping into that resource and that kind of talent pool that is present at Media City. So there is going to be this kind of blended approach that we're going to be taking. And it's probably at this moment it's worth now having a little chat about the 3rd module, which is the module which I'm going to be leading, which is your major project that you'll be taking in your kind of final practical project and portfolio. And this runs in quite a different way to the first 2 modules, but in a very deliberate way of doing this. You'll kind of come to this module, and it's something we'll be kind of seeding through the first 2 trimesters of thinking about kind of a major research question or kind of major problem that you want to be exploring kind of within your role. So it could be within your role as a sound designer, it could be within your role as an editor, it could be within your role as a director. You want to be kind of thinking about this as a problem and working out what that problem might be that you want to explore. And then in the third trimester, you will be researching and working in this model of practices research, researching an answer to this problem. And the way you'll be researching it is in the kind of traditional model of kind of looking at books, looking at what other scholars have done, speaking to other filmmakers, then also actually the production of a product. And the product is something that's kind of open for negotiation between you as a filmmaker and us as the tutors. So it could be a short film, it could be a gallery installation, it could be a series of scripts. But it's really something that is driven by you as a filmmaker and your individual ideas. And the way it's delivered through the trimester is we'll start off with lots of kind of sessions, kind of first few weeks, thinking about these questions, helping you really establish these questions of what is those questions and what is that product that you want to be making, and also identifying where there's collaboration that can be happening. So is there actually kind of a number of projects that kind of a group of you can gather together as a crew, all have your own questions, but then be collaborating to make a film and a product at the end of it. And then for the rest of the trimester, once you've kind of worked out that, you'll present what your problem is, present what your project you'll be making, and then you've got the rest of the trimester to go away and actually make that. And you'll be supported in a kind of a one-to-one tutorial system. So each of you will be allocated a supervisor who will be kind of supporting you and looking after your project in kind of mentorship role, guiding you through this research and guiding through your project. And then ultimately, at the end of it, we'll be coming back together and having a screening and another kind of presentation, kind of a research symposium, where you'll be presenting your research and your film back to your peers, but back to others as well who kind of are working in this methodology. So again, that idea of dialogue and collaboration runs all the way through, right up until your kind of final assessment of your final film and your portfolio that you're submitting. All of it is there in this kind of practice of research and in collaboration with one another. And as a kind of a question that we kind of got asked, that kind of links this in kind of idea of presentations of how am I actually going to be kind of assessed in the MA? What is it actually that I'm going to be kind of marked on? So why don't we kind of go back to the beginning of trimester one, and Pavel, like, how are we going to kind of be assessed through it? Is it going to be essays? Is it films, presentations? What is it going to be?
So the core of assessment will really be on the basis of a portfolio of projects. And what's important to mention here is that while everybody will take part in 3 distinct projects, and so their portfolio would initially have 3 projects, it will be up to you to choose 2 of those based on the initial feedback that you've received, which ones are the strongest work that you want to be represented by. So in that sense also, even if you collaborated with others on a project, you will still be able to choose the project that you submit as your individual portfolio and on which you wish to be assessed. And also, again, just to stress the fact that you will actually receive that formative feedback at the end of each 4-week block, whereas the portfolio is only submitted at the very end of the module, which means that you will actually be able to implement that feedback and improve the work further for the submission. So there is at every step there is the desire really to allow you to produce your very best work and get the very best marks. And the second aspect will be a reflection, that it's sort of a bit more formal reflection, meaning that it's a reflection that you can submit rather than one that you just release into the ether in the moment. But again, there will be a lot of flexibility in how to negotiate how this might be produced. So it can be written, but it doesn't have to be written at all. It could also be in a form of a video essay or perhaps even other kind of a format. It could involve a lot of documentation that you gather throughout the creative process. So ideally, it will be come on an amalgamation of reflection and documentation that you submit as your assignment to in kind of a strong correspondence with your portfolio.
Brilliant, thanks, Pavel. And John, what about kind of your model? How am I going to be kind of submitting my assessments to you if I was you?
Right. It's quite similar in that there'll be a portfolio and you'll submit twice, really. Now the thing about devising is that we're submitting all the way along. Every day we're looking and screening. And I think that I haven't decided exactly how many times throughout the term, but I think that what will happen is that students will submit a draft probably, I think in the 3rd week and the 6th week, they'll submit a draft of where they are now, right? They'll cull from the many, many minutes / hours of footage that they have. They'll submit that and they'll submit a short written reflection. And these will be in draft format. And then they'll submit again in week 6. And then I think at the end, they'll submit a final portfolio involving their cut of the film, which it could potentially be, depending on the student, it could potentially be there if they're an editor and they wanted to take charge and cut their own cut separate from the group, that works just fine. It would have to be worked out on a case-by-case basis. Potentially the group could submit one final bit that they've all collaborated on the edit. And that will come along with a portfolio involving a self-reflection that's not a draft, that's taken a little bit further down towards a kind of self-reflection and research paper. It's a bit of a hybrid there. So yes, so is that clear? So a film with a bit of written reflection in draft format twice, and then a final film and a more finalized version of the written reflection.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, John. So kind of the ways that you'll be assessing in trimester 3, it'll be your film, and then you'll be assessed upon, and then your research report, which you'll be kind of presenting as well. So all of these elements are kind of all there to help you kind of build your processes, build your practice as a filmmaker. And something also, we've spoken about kind of the hours and the time which we'll be spending with you in seminars and workshops, but what about kind of out of the classroom, out of those formalized times? Like, what would you be expecting students to be doing? Like, how much time would you be wanting students to be doing in terms of their own self-guided study through the MA?
So, well, let me put it diplomatically, right? Because I feel maybe this is a good opportunity to say this. I think that there is clearly a sense that a lot of students are conscious of being able to do the MA and also to support themselves to working, and that a lot of students will be kind of anxiously considering how flexible the MA is. And so I would say that it is on the one hand, it's important to realize that this is a full-time MA, and in ideal terms, of course, that it is the case that the more time you invest, the more direct benefit you will reap, and that there's a huge gap between simply passing and getting the MA and then really getting that maximum benefit of really completely revolutionizing your way of being and thinking and becoming a radically enhanced practitioner. And so I think we are working on this spectrum, and I think that everybody has to be realistic and decide that spectrum for themselves. And of course, we don't want to discriminate against people who might struggle with work and with support. So I would say that really, in ideal terms, this is really a full-time engagement, and it is in effect like a full-time job that you kind of invest all of your energy into doing the MA. But sort of within that, I think every student ultimately will have to make that personal decision, and that is also an aspect of an MA that obviously this is something, it's a fundamentally more independent study where you kind of more on equal terms with your lecturers, and this is in many ways as a kind of the kind of step up in the kind of adult life. And so obviously everybody has to make these choices and make these decisions, but obviously, as far as I'm concerned, obviously the more time the better. Yes.
Brilliant. I think that's a really good way of kind of thinking about it, Pavel, and a good approach. And kind of within the MA, as I said, it is kind of a full-time master's program. There is that space where we want you to be kind of immersing yourself through this year and using this year as an opportunity to really kind of develop your craft. And if it is something that kind of finances and you think, well, how can I help fund this? There are grants and support kind of available for you. And if you ever look at kind of postgraduate funding, there are various kind of grants and organisations and trusts that all fund master's research and master's kind of work. So do kind of take some time kind of think about, to dig into those and see where there might be kind of support that you can be drawing in from some of these other places for your work. So in the MA, we've kind of spoken about kind of equipping you for industry, equipping you for skills that you could then take into the film industry. But is there kind of another potential avenue and kind of output of where I could move to after completing this MA? So John, do you want to kind of explore what other outputs there might be?
Yeah, I think that while this MA is going to be amazing for filmmakers and practitioners, if there are people interested in going on in academia, particularly if they're interested in going on in academia as practice as research practitioner scholars, we have a lot of practitioner scholars here, people who are actively engaged as professional researchers as well as being filmmakers. We have a number of us here, and I think that that's really kind of amazing and uncommon. So if you are someone who fancies getting an MA and then potentially going on to do a PhD and on to have a career as an academic or as a person who is transdisciplinary and straddles lots of different fields, then I think this is a perfect opportunity. You'll be engaging with practitioners that are younger and entering the field as well as, and you'll be engaging with practitioners who are older and have been around the block and worked in industry and gotten PhDs and gotten MFAs, and can guide you and help you hone your research skills and your research agenda.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Great. So we're rattling through the questions. I think, will there be an open day? So if you're kind of listening to this podcast and you're interested and you want to actually kind of come find out more, we've got an online open day which is happening on the 19th of June. And to sign up for that, go to salford.ac.uk/postgraduate/open-days, and that will take you to the website, and I'll get Harry to put a link to that. So if you are interested, please click on that. You'll get another chance to hear us talk about the course, but also you will get a chance to kind of find out more about some of that background material for kind of applying for MAs, financing for MAs, and those elements that the university is putting on. So I really recommend coming along to that if you are thinking about it. How many students? I mentioned this earlier, but we're looking for about a cohort of 25 to 30 students joining us. And do we have to work in groups? And as you kind of heard from what we've spoken from all the modules, like, yes, it's such a core part of the film industry. And as the idea of collaboration and working together, working in groups is something that is really key to our underpinning.
Obviously, specializing is something that is perfectly sort of meaningful within the MA. Equally, there is no particular path, right, for this specialism. So I think that in a way there is actually a lot of room to accommodate quite naturally people who don't want to specialize. And actually, I would even say that it's one of the kind of selling points that that people could mix and match, that people can tap into other things, and again, to sell that specialism, that I think that people can specialize, but in the process kind of expand on their specialism through the possibility of tapping into different kind of skills and understanding and conceptual kind of a framing of filmmaking. So I would say kind of yes, and even the specialism, it's a kind of a, I think, enriched sort of a specialism 2.0, I think that we might potentially offer, right? Rather than just the kind of conventional doing one particular sort of head of department role.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Pavel just said was great. And it goes along with, because we were talking earlier about specialism and how it expands and is transdisciplinary. So this could fit right up against that.
Yeah. So if you kind of listen to us chat about the MA today and you're kind of thinking like, yes, I really want to come and apply to this MA, I want to kind of come join you in September, you might think, what is the application process? And Beth, you're kind of leading the team in terms of admission. So do you want to kind of chat through the application process of how I go from a potential applicant to receiving an offer from you?
Yeah, of course. So initially, obviously, go to the website, have a good read of everything, and you've done the first thing by listening to this as well. But in terms of applying, you will need to go through the university and submit 3 kind of key documents that we'll need to see to support your application. And they will be a portfolio. And that doesn't need to be kind of lots and lots of different pieces of your work. It could just be 1 or 2, but that you clearly tell us what your roles were on those projects and what it was that you were looking to investigate as well by undertaking that work, right? It's in your portfolio. And then we would also look for your personal statement. And again, on the website, there are clear kind of guidelines if you've not kind of completed a personal statement before that will talk you through the kind of things to include in that. And then a proposal. And that should be a proposal for a potential project that you'd be interested in potentially exploring through the MA. So in that, you'll be thinking about telling us what the project is, what your role would be, and particularly what it is that you'd want to be exploring about that. And the reason we ask for that is it serves in 2 kind of ways. It allows us to see what you're interested in and what you're interested in exploring and challenging through your work, but also gives us, if your application initially comes through to us and it has all the documentation is successful, and that's if we will invite you in for an interview. And in this interview, or as we like to call conversation, it's an opportunity for us to better understand your work and what it is that you're looking for, and also an opportunity for you to ask us any further questions as well. But it also gives us, the proposal gives us a chance to really discuss your aims and your goals. And it is, if you're then successful after the interview or conversation and offered a place on the MA, your proposal starts as an initial place for us to start with you on the first module. It's not something that's set in stone and that you then must work to the letter of that proposal, but it becomes a starting point of exploration for us on the course.
Brilliant, Beth. So that is the process to apply. If you do have any other questions that you want to kind of ask, do feel free to get in touch. My email is t.g.kirby@salford.ac.uk, so do feel free to send them through to me and I'll try and answer them. If you've got particular contacts about the course, please do get in touch. So I hope you've really enjoyed listening to this. I hope it's given you a really good insight into what the MA is offering. I'm really excited to be running it and having such a great team, both here with me today, but also wider at the university leading to it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys kind of coming on board and coming as students and us kind of having a real great year collaborating together and growing you as filmmakers. So I will say goodbye from me and goodbye to Beth, John and Pavel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Cheerio. And on that note, we will say farewell. So farewell.